Realizing what you preach by running for presidency of Kenya. One, no, seriously, look, we must be doers of the word and not just hearers and speakers of the word. Africa's failure is leadership, and you've demonstrated clearly, eruditely, that you are eminently qualified from what you say to deliver for Kenya. And the Ethiopian government told us clearly that you cannot invest in Ethiopia if you are not an Ethiopian. You cannot buy land. And I was thoroughly disappointed.
Let me answer the question about Ethiopia. And I left this out so that we could engage in it. Right now, there are a number of things that are happening in Africa that are very interesting. Ethiopia was under the Derg regime of Mengistu Haile Mariam for almost 10 years. And the Derg regime replaced what was a feudal government under Haile Selassie. Then there was the civil war and the guerrilla movement under Meles Zenawi in 1984. I was a university student then. And I remember that at that particular time in the life of Ethiopia, in terms of electricity generation, they generated no more than 500 megawatts of electricity. In the last over 20 years, Ethiopia, by next year, will be generating anything between 10,000 and 15,000 megawatts. That is still more than Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan combined. And the reason, and of course Nigeria, and the reason is the Ethiopians took the view that in order to grow your market, you've got to protect certain aspects of your market. And I think that was the underlying philosophy. I believe that you have read, and if you have not, you'll read the book written by the South Korean Ha Jun Chang, The Bad Samaritans. In the book, The Bad Samaritan, Ha Jun Chang says that the Europeans have been prescribing to the world models of development that they themselves did not use. He says that if you look at the history of any one of the European powers, whether it's the United Kingdom, whether it's Germany, whether it's France, whether it's the United States of America, and subsequently even the Asians like Japan and even now China and South Korea, they protected their markets. There are certain areas where they did not allow people to invest. And another thing that they did was to subsidize certain critical areas, including in the area of research and development. And the Ethiopians took that view in those early days. As I speak to you now, the Ethiopians are beginning to open their markets for mobile telephony. They are opening their markets for banking. They are opening their markets for insurance because they now think they are ready. And I think that even when we talk about African trade, there will be wisdom in doing that. And I can understand, if you ask me in a room I understand why the Nigerians are closing their market with Benin. They are economic reasons. I understand why they are closing their market with Ghana. But my only contra-argument that Nigeria is so big that even if you allowed Benin and Ghana, nothing would happen. It will be like watering the desert with a teaspoon. That is how big Nigeria is. So effectively what one is saying is that even when we talk about Africa moving and freeing the markets, there are certain fundamentals that must be addressed. Which brings me to a question that you did not ask, but I'll answer nevertheless. ECOWAS is now talking about the ECO. I'm sneezing, and if you are about to sneeze, you must sneeze. It's one of the things that you must do when it comes. So you can see, for example, the ECOWAS says they must have the ECO by next year. I don't think you'll have the ECO next year. And if you ask the economists, and I'm not one, they will tell you no. There are certain fundamentals that must be in place. But it's a good idea. So in short, sharp answer is Africa will have to open up slowly, and the individual countries, because of their different traditions, will have to open up slowly. Which brings me to the question, is it the case that anybody who wants to change their country must be president? I don't believe so. I do not believe so. In fact, I hold the view that sometimes you are a lot more effective outside of the trappings of the presidency. Because if it happens, is a good thing, because the truth be told, it is easier to influence things from the top if you are well-intentioned. Which brings me to Rwanda, for example. If you listen to somebody like Paul Kagame, there is clarity. Whether you say many things about him, about human rights and other things, but look at a country whose obituary had been written in 1994. Of course, it is still a small country, a population of 12 million, a GDP of no more than 12 billion United States dollars. But you look at what has happened in the recent past against the history that we are talking about, you can see clarity. And that is the clarity that I think sometimes we miss in many African countries. The fact that if we want to deal with the health sector, we are improving the health sector in a manner that is choreographed, in a manner that is coherent. If we are dealing with agriculture, it is coherent. If we are dealing with the mining sector, it is coherent. If we are dealing with research and development for purposes of invention and innovation, it is coherent. If you go to Rwanda today, you can go to Rwanda in the morning and you apply for registration of a company in the morning. In the afternoon, you'll have a certificate of registration. That is what you need. The environment is enabling. But in some countries, you must know a minister in order to incorporate a company. You must know a senior government official in order to run business. That is bad for business. So I hold the view and I hear you. But one of the most critical things is that each one of us must now play their roles wherever they are. Because if you wait to be president, the African electorate is also very interesting. The African electorate will listen to all your good ideas, but on the day of the voting, what motivates them is totally different. So it is much more likely, if you look at, there is the story of Ali Baba and the 40 thieves. Africans are much more likely to put Ali Baba and the 40 thieves in office, than to put good men and women in office. And that is why sometimes I think we are co-authors of our own misfortune. Let us ask ourselves today, and I'm giving a good example. Today, if you are to ask Nigerians, I don't know much, but perhaps Aliko Dangote, through his entrepreneurship and his other colleagues in the business world, contribute monumentally to the Nigerian country in terms of taxes and other things. And if you go to South Africa, you'll discover that that is the case. You may have your own Nigerian concerns about how they conduct business, but the truth is, if you have salt in your house, there is an entrepreneur that is doing, and it rather Aliko Dangote does it in Nigeria, than rather some British did it. So I'm saying, wherever you are, whatever you do, make a contribution. If you wait to be the president, you'll be waiting for Godot. Thank you.
Thank you.